all over the world. Local consumer prices continue to hover at the 2% rate in April.
Turning to robots to allow the visually impaired the chance to better indulge in cultural experiences. Like the number of hybrid cars registered in South Korea has surpassed 2 million using its locally developed Yuri rocket.
Arirang.
It's May 29th here in Seoul, and I'm Kim Dami. We begin with the stories making the headlines at this hour, starting with early voting for the June 3rd presidential election. The first of 2 days of early voting is underway as of 6 a.m. Thursday here in South Korea. Early voters can vote at any of the 3,569 polling stations across the country by presenting their government-issued identification cards. And the main presidential runners are voting early on the first day of the early voting period, which also means a conservative merger between People Power Party's Kim Moon-soo and Reform Party's Lee Jun-seok has officially fallen flat. And as we come on air, South Korea's central bank has cut its policy rate to 2.5% as part of efforts to shore up the sluggish economy. 2 days of early voting have begun in South Korea to elect the country's 21st president. Voters across the country are already making their ways to polling stations 5 days earlier than the actual election day. And our An Sung-jin is at one of them here in Seoul. Good morning, Sung-jin.
Good morning, Dami.
So, Sung-jin, which of the country's 3,569 polling stations are you at?
Right, Tommy. So I'm standing in front of an early voting polling station in Yeoksamdong, Gangnam-gu district, an area bustling with many offices and business people. I've been out here since fairly early in the morning, and as you can probably see behind me, we saw an influx of voters coming in early to vote before they headed to work. So many as the officials had to control the line, which extended way beyond the polling station in front.
I'm 20 years old, so this is my first time to vote. I hope someone who can bring national unity and enhance people's livelihoods becomes the next president.
I've been waiting to vote, and I wanted to do so as soon as I could. I came early before work because I couldn't wait out of frustration.
So there haven't been much issues with the voting process going fairly smoothly. And for this presidential election, there are more than 3,500 polling stations nationwide, with around 420 of them in Seoul.
Now, Sung-jin, tell us how early voting works. For this early presidential voting, the National Election Commission has made extra effort to realize a fair and transparent election. Is that correct?
Right, so to begin with how early voting works, early voting takes place for 2 days, Thursday and Friday, from 6 a.m. till 6 p.m. Those eligible voters must be over 18 and also bring a government-issued ID. Turnout in previous early voting in 2017 was 26.1%, while in 2022 it was 36.9%, a record high figure. Although we did see an increase in turnout rate in 2022, with voting taking place on a weekday, unlike previously, we may see a lower number. The process of verifying vote counting officials will be strengthened after accusations in 2020 that Chinese voting officials during the general election may have rigged votes. The NEC emphasized that it will be hiring all 260,000 voting and counting officials as Korean nationals to shut down any suspicions of election fraud. Ballot boxes will be monitored around the clock, and the NEC will also run a fair election observation team for the first time to observe the entire election process from voting to counting. The NEC had also announced that in this presidential election, the number of voters per hour will be disclosed by each polling station for the first time.
So Sungjin, it's past 10 a.m. as we are speaking, which means 4 hours have passed since the early voting began. How many South Koreans have voted early so far?
Right, so as of 9 a.m. at the polling station I'm at, 1,722 people have voted, and the total for Seoul is 293,852. Other major cities like Busan saw 77,052 people, Daegu 40,811, and Sejong 11,807 people. However, as we're just passing 10 a.m. as we speak, the figures should have been updated, which I will bring in our later newscast. The Democratic Party spokesperson said that their party's candidate Lee Jae-myung will vote in Seoul this morning. The People's Power Party Kim Moon-soo is also believed to be voting early. That's all I have for now, and later I will be back with some new updates for our later newscast.
All right, Sungjin, thank you for that coverage. That was our An Sungjin at one of the early voting polling stations here in the capital. With 5 days left until the election, candidates are ramping up their campaigns. And yesterday, Democratic Party candidate Lee Jae-myung set out to win over voters in Seoul, the biggest battleground. Our campaign correspondent Shin-Young reports.
A day before early voting begins for the snap presidential election, Democratic Party candidate Lee Jae-myung visited eastern Seoul, which the party describes as a region that shows Seoul's past, present, and future.
Lee Jae-myung's campaign on Wednesday is focusing on attracting support from voters in the capital by sharing his plan to make eastern Seoul not only a new hub for business, culture, and transportation growth, but also, as a result, a better place to live.
Ahead of Wednesday's rally, Lee joined a live YouTube broadcast where he emphasized his commitment to push South Korea's benchmark index, the KOSPI, to 5,000 points and outlined plans for stock market reform.
South Korea's conservative governments have not been typical conservative governments, which has made them irrational. The economy relies on rationality and predictability. With little economic policy and frequent corporate abuses, the market stayed weak. Fixing these issues could boost the market by 200 to 300 points.
Meanwhile, the DP focused on getting people out to the polls, urging the public to vote to end what the party described as an insurrection.
Let's bring peace, revive the economy, and unite the country by taking part in early voting this Thursday and Friday. Everyone, please make sure to vote. Your vote is more powerful than guns and swords.
Floor leader and acting chairman Park Chan-dae, who also serves as a chair of the presidential campaign committee, also noted that overseas voter turnout had reached a record high, reflecting a strong desire among Koreans abroad for peace and change in the country. He stressed that it is now up to voters in South Korea to carry that momentum forward. He is expected to cast his vote in Seoul's Sinchon on the first day of early voting and encourage others to take part as well. Shin-Young, Arirang News.
And the People Power Party's Kim Moon-soo made a U-turn to the country's southeast on the same day, where the party's traditional voters are concentrated. Our correspondent Kim Do-yeon has this report.
Uniting traditional supporters of the party amid the impeachment fallout was People Power Party candidate Kim Moon-soo's final move before the start of the early voting. On Wednesday, Kim toured in Gyeongsang-do region, a traditional conservative stronghold, which he certainly needs to secure for any chance of turning things around in the election. While targeting local voters, he also appealed to younger voters by visiting a university in the region and pledged more jobs and opportunities.
It's not just about simply providing jobs. Within this system, professors and students actually run research labs themselves, develop new ideas there, try launching startups based on those ideas, and we support them until they succeed. Once they do, they move out and continue on their own. That's the process.
During his rallies, he also pledged an express railway system in the region to connect all major metropolitan cities to ensure they're reachable within 1 hour for a better commute. Throughout the region, he stopped at 7 cities in total, including here in Yeongcheon, his birthplace. To add to his efforts to boost support, he called this specific rally Mom Moon-soo's Home. Meanwhile, the camp also revealed that Kim will participate in early voting on Thursday. For this, he's going straight to the lion's den by casting a ballot at a voting center in his DP rival Lee Jae-myung's congressional district. But the camp says it's more than that.
To put meaning into voting in Incheon, it's not only Lee Jae-myung's home district, but also the historic city where the Incheon landing operation turned the tide of the Korean War, preventing a communist takeover and paving the way for South Korea's post-war transformation.
Meanwhile, the ship for any last-minute merger with the Reform Party seems to have sailed, as Wednesday was the realistic deadline, and communication between the two parties has been severed for some time. The PPP claimed that a three-way race has its own benefits, with Reform Party voters changing their minds as their votes seem like a waste in the end. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News, Yeongcheon.
And attempts to form a merger between conservative candidates have effectively fallen through as early voting for the presidential election is now underway. Around midnight on Thursday, with just 6 hours left before early voting began, the People Power Party's Kim Moon-soo aimed to track down Lee Jun-seok of the Reform Party at Lee's office at the National Assembly. However, Lee was not there and did not respond to Kim's attempts to reach him through various channels. Now, Lee has consistently said he will not merge with the PPP. The Reform Party candidate on Thursday is set to cast his vote at an early voting station in Hwasong City, Gyeonggi-do Province. He'll continue reaching out to young voters, meeting with tech sector workers and university students, and drop by a popular street food alley in Central Seoul. South Korea's central bank has slashed its benchmark interest rate by 25 basis points as widely expected, bringing it down to 2.5%. In its fourth Monetary Policy Committee meeting of the year, the Bank of Korea on Thursday announced a rate cut after leaving rates unchanged in January and in April and lowering them in February. The decision comes amid growing economic uncertainty from U.S. tariff policies, as well as the stabilization of the $1 exchange rate. South Korea's economy already contracted in the first quarter, shrinking by 0.25%, a sharp downturn from the central bank's February forecast of 0.2% growth. The Bank of Korea also revised down its economic growth projection for the year from 1.5% to 0.8%. So the Bank of Korea went for a rate cut in the last monetary policy meeting of the first half of 2025, which many experts say was a much-needed decision by the central bank. Let's turn to Professor Park Min-jung for details. It's good to have you with us.
Good morning. Thank you for having me today.
So the rate cut this morning was widely expected, but would you say it was timely for the BOK to lower the rate considering South Korea's current economic situation?
Yeah, today's current rate cut is widely expected, and given the current state of the South Korean economy, I would say it was a timely move by central bank because domestic demand has remained weak nowadays, with consumer spending showing little signs of recovery and also business investment staying cautious. Furthermore, key indicators shows like retail sales and service sector outputs have been stagnating, and also overall consumer sentiment remains subdued nowadays. But although experts have shown signs of improvement nowadays, it's clear that without a rebound in domestic demand, economic recovery will be difficult in the short term.
And that's probably why the central bank also decided to slash the country's growth outlook to 0.8%.
Yeah, the reason the Bank of Korea revised down country's growth outlook over 8% is growing concern over weak domestic demand and sluggish private consumption. Despite some improvement in exports, as I said before, internal drivers of growth like household spending and corporate investment remain subdued and for a long time. There are also broader concerns about a slowdown in the job market and ongoing uncertainties in the global economy, including geopolitical tensions and supply chain risks. All of these factors weigh on consumer confidence and overall economic momentum. So the downgrade outlook is not just a reaction to the short-term data. It signals the Bank of Korea's recognition that the recovery is likely to be slow and more fragile than previously were expected.
Well, what we can look forward to next month is tariff negotiations are being resumed with the U.S. under the new South Korean government. Now, the upcoming discussions in June will be crucial in measuring how much South Korea's economy will expand this year. Is that correct?
Yeah, the upcoming tariff negotiations with the U.S. will play a significant and critical factor in shaping South Korea's economic outlook this year, especially under the new administration in June. Trade is a major pillar in Korea's economic situations, and any adjustments in tariff structures could directly impact key export sectors like semiconductors, batteries, or automobiles. So if the negotiations lead to reduced trade friction or greater market access, that could support export growth and in turn boost overall GDP. But on the other hand, if tensions escalate or if South Korea faces pressure to make some unbearable concessions, it could downgrade. It means it could damp business sentiment and slow down the recovery.
Professor, going back to the Bank of Korea's decision for a rate cut, the recent strengthening of the Korean won also played a significant role in today's rate cut, didn't it?
Yes, the recent strengthening of the Korean won did play a significant role in the Bank of Korea's decision to cut interest rates. So the appreciation of the won, which rebounded approximately 9% from its lows in April, alleviated some of the central bank's concerns about currency-induced inflation. So a stronger won reduces the cost of imports, thereby easing inflationary pressures and providing the Bank of Korea with more flexibility to lower rates to support economic growth. So moreover, the stabilization of the won migrated risk is associated with capital outflows and financial instability.
So finally, a much-needed rate cut, and all eyes are on what the year-end interest rate will look like at the end of 2025. Many analysts are betting on 2.25%. Professor Park, are you also one of the 2.25% betting analysts?
Yeah, maybe almost a lot of major analysts are predicted betting on 2.25%. There's a growing attention. It means Bank of Korea will end up in terms of interest are pointing to 2.25% at likely level. I think the reason for it is that twofold. The first is that even though the Korean economy clearly needs help because people are spending less and businesses are investing much, the central bank has to be careful about the interest rate gap with the U.S. So the Federal Reserve also keeping rates high for a long time. If Korea cut its rates too much, like making too big cuts, the gap could grow a lot. And also the Bank of Korea seems to be aiming for a balanced approach. It means providing enough monetary easing to support growth and while maintaining financial stability and protecting Korea won from excessive depreciation.
Right. That is why we'll be closely keeping an eye on the Fed's decision in the coming weeks and months as well. Professor Park, thank you so much for your time and your insights. As always, we appreciate it.
Thank you.
Russia has proposed holding second round of direct talks with Ukraine in Istanbul next Monday. U.S. President Donald Trump doubled down on his criticism of Russian President Vladimir Putin, saying he'll know soon if the Russian leader is just tapping him along. Lee Seung-jae reports.
Moscow has proposed holding another round of direct talks with Kyiv. The meeting, which would again take place in Istanbul, is slated for June 2nd, with the aim of achieving a sustainable peace settlement.
The Russian side, as agreed, has promptly developed a relevant memorandum which sets out our position on all aspects of reliably overcoming the root causes of the crisis. Our delegation, led by Vladimir Medinsky, is ready to present this memorandum to the Ukrainian delegation and to provide necessary clarifications during the second round of direct talks in Istanbul next Monday, June 2nd.
However, there was no immediate response from Ukraine. The proposed talks come as their previous meeting on May 16th in Istanbul ended without an agreement on a ceasefire. Russia's top envoy Sergei Lavrov expressed hope that those interested in the success of the peace process will support holding a new round of Russia-Ukraine negotiations in Istanbul. Meanwhile, U.S. President Donald Trump said Wednesday that he doesn't want to impose any new sanctions on Russia yet, as he does not want such penalties to interfere with getting a ceasefire. When asked by a reporter if he believes Russian President Vladimir Putin is sincere about ending the war, Trump said he'll know in about 2 weeks.
I can't tell you that, but I'll let you know in about 2 weeks. Within 2 weeks, we're going to find out very soon. We're going to find out whether or not he's tapping us along or not. And if he is, we'll respond a little bit differently, but it'll take about a week and a half, 2 weeks.
The U.S. president also said Putin may be intentionally delaying ceasefire negotiations while expressing his disappointment over recent Russian strikes in Ukraine. 이승재, Arirang News.
In the meantime, U.S. President Donald Trump has called for a drastic reduction in the number of international students at Harvard University, proposing a cap of just 15%. That's less than half of the current figure. Our Kim Jung-sil has the details.
Speaking from the Oval Office on Wednesday, President Trump said Harvard's international student enrollment is too high and should be reduced.
About 31% of their students are foreign-based, almost 31%. I think they should have a cap of maybe around 15%, not 31%. We have people who want to go to Harvard and other schools. They can't get in because we have foreign students there.
It's part of the growing pressure on the school from the Trump administration. Last month, it froze $2.2 billion in federal funding to the school. It then suspended the school's authority to issue I-20 visas, halting new international admissions.
We want to know where those students come. Are they troublemakers? What countries do they come? Many of those students were troublemakers caused by the radical left lunatics in this country.
Following President Trump's remarks, Secretary of State Marco Rubio announced a new crackdown, saying the U.S. will aggressively revoke visas for Chinese students, including those linked to the Chinese Communist Party or studying in critical fields. New applications from China and Hong Kong will also face tougher scrutiny. Trump says he wants Harvard to be great again, but not everyone on campus agrees.
The attack on Harvard and its international students is part of a deeper effort to defund and dismantle the academic world.
What makes Harvard Harvard is the ability to bring back the best and the brightest from all around the world, and that is what is under threat right now.
In South Korea, students say new visa appointments at the U.S. Embassy are currently unavailable. This comes as the U.S. moves to expand the social media screening for international applicants. Kim Jung-sil, Arirang News.
Now let's take a look at some stories from around the world with our Ji-hee. Good morning, Ji-hee.
Good morning, Tommy.
So Ji-hee, over in the Middle East, hunger and desperation have led to deadly incidents at aid distribution centers over in Gaza. Tell us more.
That's right. Humanitarian efforts in Gaza are faced by immense challenges as crowds overwhelmed a food aid center and a warehouse. Despite scenes of chaos and conflicting casualty claims, aid distribution by the U.S. and Israeli-backed Gaza Humanitarian Foundation resumed for a second day on Wednesday. The GHF delivered emergency food supplies in southern Gaza, distributing over 14,000 aid boxes across 2 sites. One of them reopened after delays caused by crowd surges and prior looting. Al Jazeera cited at least 9 deaths over 2 days, while Gaza's health ministry reported 1 fatality and 48 injured on the first day alone. Meanwhile, the World Food Programme confirmed that crowds stormed one of its warehouses in central Gaza, leading to 2 deaths. The GHF plans to continue distributions on Thursday, with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu reaffirming support for the mission. Mexico will hold its first ever public election for federal judges, including Supreme Court justices across the country on June 1st, marking a shift in the nation's judicial selection process. The elections will fill 881 federal judicial positions, including 9 Supreme Court justices, electoral tribunal magistrates, and district judges. The initiative stems from constitutional reform enacted in September 2024, which changed the judiciary from an appointment-based system to one determined by popular vote. Proponents, including President Claudia Sheinbaum and her predecessor, argue that electing judges will enhance accountability and reduce corruption within the judiciary. However, opponents expressed concerns that it may compromise judicial independence, making judges susceptible to political and criminal influence. Voters will receive 6 separate ballots to elect officials across various judicial levels. However, the complexity of the process means expected voter turnout below 30%. In Switzerland, a glacier collapse on Wednesday buried the alpine village of Blatten under a massive landslide. The catastrophe occurred at around 3:30 p.m. local time as a significant portion of the Birch Glacier broke off, triggering the landslide. The avalanche of ice, mud, and rock covered about 90% of the village, destroying homes and infrastructure. Around 300 residents and their livestock had been evacuated a few days before the event after geologists warned of the glacier's instability. Despite the evacuation, 1 person remains missing and search and rescue operations are ongoing.
We are in for another day where we'll need to keep both sunglasses and an umbrella handy. The atmosphere remains a bit unstable for this afternoon, so some spots could see a brief but heavy downpours. Most places can expect 5 to 20 millimeters of passing showers, but Gyeongsangdo provinces could be seeing heavier showers. But until that rain falls, skies will be mostly sunny nationwide, meaning the sunshine will be strong. The UV index will be higher in southern parts of Korea this afternoon with high ozone concentrations. And this afternoon, Seoul will be getting up to 26 degrees. Daejeon, Daegu both will be climbing to 27 degrees. And looking ahead, tomorrow brings a chance of showers to the southern coastal areas. And early summer heat sets in and stays through the weekend. Meanwhile, the weather is looking promising for the presidential election next Tuesday.
We thank you for watching New Day at Arirang. Arirang News will be back at 5 p.m. Korea time.
천안에 가면 재밌다 이거. 글로벌 K컬처 세계 속에 꽃 피우다. 2025 천안 K컬처 박람회.
Set the facts straight. Get Korea right. K-culture is sweeping the globe. K-pop, K-drama, K-movie, K-food, and even K-beauty. Korean cultural content is gaining more and more fans worldwide. It's indeed the golden age of K-culture. But with this growing interest comes an increase in misinformation about Korea. There's so much inaccurate information out there. Even AI can sometimes get it wrong. So, we must set things straight and correct all the misinformation. So here's the plan. The Voluntary Agency Network of Korea, VANK, and Arirang TV present the Get Korea Right project. Our goal is to provide accurate information on important keywords that come to mind when we think of Korea. Blatant errors and false claims that distort history. It's time to set the record straight, sharing the true history and culture of Korea while raising the national brand. Let's get started with Get Korea Right. Are you ready to join?
제주 영어 교육 도시의 중심 NLCS 제주에서 세계 명문대 출신 엘리트 교사진과 해외 커리큘럼으로 전 세계 상위 1%의 학사 성과를 달성하고 있으며 졸업생들은 세계 최정상급 대학으로 진학하고 있습니다. 전인적인 성장과 함께 꿈을 찾아가는 특별한 교육의 가치. 글로벌 동문 네트워크로 계속됩니다. NLCS 제주가 명문대 진학의 길을 열어갑니다.
We're here to bring a new type of news show. New insights, new styles, and new topics every day.
We are News Generation.
Bring news just for you. It's Thursday, May 29th here in Seoul. I'm Song Yujin, and you're tuning into News Generation. Joining us today is Cheska Daina. Happy Thursday, everyone! Happy Thursday! Yeah. And Julian Kim.
Happy Thursday.
Welcome back.
Thank you so much.
Now, both are here to speak on behalf of those in their 20s and 30s. We're going to begin with our keyword news for this Thursday. Today's keyword is Seoul. Now, South Korea's capital has made a notable leap in this year's Global Cities Index published by Oxford Economics. Out of 8,000 cities around the world, Seoul ranked 15th overall, climbing dropping 26 spots from last year. And that makes it the second highest ranked city in Asia behind Tokyo, which came in 9th. Now, the index evaluates cities based on 5 key categories, which are economy, human capital, quality of life, environment, and governance. And Seoul scored particularly well in human capital, placing 5th globally thanks to its world-class universities and the presence of major global corporations. And it also performed strongly in economic strength, coming in at 18th based on indicators like GDP and employment. However, the city's rankings in quality of life, governance, and especially environment fell into the triple digits. The lowest score was in the environmental category due to poor air quality and abnormal weather patterns linked to climate change. So, both of our panelists, including myself, are living in Seoul. So, as a Seoul resident, can you relate to these findings?
Yeah, I can definitely see why Seoul has gotten these rankings. As someone who has recently moved to the city a little over a year ago, I've really come to enjoy what the city has to offer. However, in regards to its low ranking in quality of life, governance, and environment, it is definitely hard to ignore this in our daily life, especially when we go through days where the air quality is just absolutely horrendous.
Right.
But given how Seoul has been quickly improving and how much I personally really enjoy living in the city, I am pretty optimistic to see how things will play out in the future.
Right. So if we get to improve air quality a little bit more, maybe we could see the ranking climbing up a bit more next year or the year after that. And what are your thoughts on this, Cheska?
Yeah, I'm also very optimistic too because I've also lived in New York, which is actually ranked
first
in the index. So I was kind of looking at the chart and thinking to myself, I can see why Korea has jumped 26 rankings in just a year, but I think it could have bumped up a little bit higher because there are so many great things about Seoul City that you just don't get in other places. I know it talked about life quality and the reason for it being ranked so low had to do with housing problems as well, but you know, the cost of living, fast service, security, I think all deserve a higher ranking. And personally, as someone living in Seoul, I love Seoul. So every city has its pros and cons, as Julian said, but I really think Seoul is a great city to live in many ways.
Yeah, we love Seoul. Now, meanwhile, as Cheska briefly mentioned, New York, London, and Paris took the top 3 spots on the global list, and that wraps up our keyword news for this Thursday. So we're now going to move on to our main discussion of the day. Take a look at the screen to find out more on today's topic.
From skyrocketing grocery bills to rising rent, young people around the world are continuing to feel the pressure of inflation. Today on News Generation, we're going to take a closer look at how young people are adapting with smart, creative strategies to respond to high prices.
Right, so we are back talking about the economy and the lifestyle trends of young people because it's been said that young people in Korea are shifting the way they spend to cope with rising prices, which seems to always be making headlines not only here in Korea but in other parts of the world. So Cheska, what specific changes are we seeing here in the country?
Yeah, I think it's really important to notice these things because we are the younger generation as well. But I think one of the most notable indicator is a huge rise in second-hand trade and sales because it indicates that people are becoming more financially savvy. And I think the figures can tell the story, so let's take a look at the screen. Now, South Korea's second-hand market, and we've converted in US dollars for convenience, but in Korean won, we reached 26 trillion won in 2023, and it's projected to grow as large as 43 trillion won this year. Now, that's a pretty dramatic increase if you look at the figures, because compared to just 4 trillion won back in 2008, that's a huge jump of almost 6 times in less than a decade. And the MZ generation do make up a major portion of this market, which includes myself as well. We are very much drawn to secondhand items that often feel brand new. And also because of social media, the secondhand market has become very, very active. So we cannot ignore the fact that this generation is definitely also tight on budget. So we try to be very, very finance savvy. So without limited budget, it opens more options and variety. And many in this generation actually live in small spaces, like we call it one room, but it's like pretty much a studio apartment. So it's impossible to pack a lot of things in it. So we have to be really practical and, space savvy. So it's more practical to buy used items at lower cost and then resell them when we move to a different place or when we want to upgrade our homes. So I think in many ways people are choosing secondhand market for both financial reasons but also practical reasons as well.
So secondhand trading is definitely one big example, but as a generation who really loves challenges, I heard that there is a finance savvy challenge that has gone viral among our generation, right, Julian?
Yeah, so this challenge is called the No Spending Challenge, and it's very popular amongst our generation. So it's basically when an individual tests themselves to see how much or how little money they can spend. For instance, we might brew coffee at home, bring a packed lunch to work, or just cook at home instead of going out for dinner. If we go several days without spending, we will give ourselves a little treat, or it's like going out for a little sweet treat or going out for a quick meal or something like that. Now, many millennials and Gen Zers share their experience with the No Spending Challenge on social media, so if you are interested in learning more, there's plenty of content to check out about this challenge.
So secondhand trading and also this No Spending Challenge, this is part of the trend that we actually touched on before here on Newsgen, which is called 짠테크. Now, for our international viewers, this is a Korean slang term combining stingy and finance, referring to ultra-frugal money habits. So before we move on further, we're going to see just how thrifty our panelists are with a fun O and X quiz. So please raise the O and X sign depending on whether you've tried these habits before. So number one, have you ever tried app tech, which is earning pocket money by completing small missions through mobile apps on your phone? What would you say? 1, 2, 3. Cheska chose X, Julian O. Let's start with Cheska.
I think time is also money, and I've definitely tried to use these apps before, but I felt like I was spending more time on the app
than you actually earn.
Exactly, and I know every penny counts, I really do, but sometimes I feel like this time could be spent on doing something else, so I have not.
All right, then let's hear from Julian. So you've actually tried this.
Yeah, so I admittedly haven't tried it a lot, but I have tried it in the past, and I mean, every single little cent counts.
Yeah,
so if you add up all the pocket change, you could end up buying like a fried chicken or anything like that. So I say, why not?
And it's not just fried chicken. You can also buy movie tickets or hamburger sets. So yeah, definitely. So let's move on to our second statement, which is, have you ever bought or sold something secondhand? And we already have an answer from Cheska, but we're going to just do it. So 1, 2, 3, O and X. So could you tell us a bit more about your experience?
If I could, it's a very big O.
Very big O.
Because I'm actually moving my house right now, and I am in the middle of buying and selling on a secondhand market very actively.
What kind of items?
Oh my God, I sold my old chair, my cabinet. I even sell like plates, keyboards, because in Korea we have this app, a very big secondhand sales app, and you can pretty much get anything and sell anything on it. So I've sold everything, and on top of that, I'm buying like furnitures, lamps, and they come with a really affordable price. So I think it's becoming a really smart way to earn a little bit of income when I sell them. But I also have this really weird sense of pride when I find like gem in the second.
I found it, right?
I know. I'm like, I got this for like $5 less than the original price. So there's a little bit of fun in that too. Yeah.
Definitely. As a person who is doing secondhand trading, I can agree.
Right?
So much with Cheska. Well, Julian, why haven't you done secondhand trading?
I have looked through the apps, I browsed and looked at the items, but when it comes to buying something secondhand, I am a little wary about it, if I'm going to be honest.
Because of the product quality? Or?
Yes, especially the quality, but when it comes to things like damages or warranty, there are just some things I would personally prefer buying new, but I am open to trying buying something secondhand too. I'm not against it, I just haven't had the chance to so far.
Well, hope you have a chance really soon. And finally, have you ever tried what Julian mentioned, the no spending challenge? 1, 2, 3. X and O. So we're going to hear from Cheska first.
I mean, I would love to at one point, and I did try. I think it lasted 10 hours.
10 hours. Well, I think yours lasted longer than mine.
Oh, really? Yeah. Okay, that's good. Thank you for making me feel better. But for someone who is working and having meetings all the time and is around the clock, it's virtually impossible when you are lugging your luggage, your laptop, your next gym clothes, and then you have to pack your lunch, put in a tumbler, and then 3 pieces of snacks. It's just better to run to a cafe, get a quick coffee, and then head to the next meeting or next schedule. So as much as I would love to try, it wasn't very efficient for me. So I wasn't able to keep it up.
I mean, this challenge is not easy for everyone, depending on your circumstances.
I think it's amazing for people who are able to do it, but I also think it takes a certain environment to be able to execute it.
Then Julian, you answered you've tried it before, so tell us more about that.
Yeah, so it is very difficult to do the challenge, I must admit that. But as someone who does really enjoy eating out and going shopping, I do like to do the challenge because it forces me to really think about my spending habits and also just try to limit how much money I spend. So I know like Jessica's mentioned, when you go out, it's almost impossible. But other than essentials, I feel sometimes I spend things like unnecessary items. So I do the challenge for me to try to avoid spending money on things I don't need.
Are you planning to try it again?
Not right now, but maybe I should do it after the show.
That was a very long pause.
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Okay, so far we've heard from our panelists. Time to hear from our viewers. We also asked them the same question. What have you done to cut down on expenses? So we ran a poll on our Arirang News YouTube channel. 59% answered they've gone out less, followed by 30% bought fewer things, and then shopped secondhand 7%, and saved water and laundry 4%. Right, but this isn't a trend limited to Korea, money-saving trends. I want to ask you, are there any other examples that young people from other countries are adopting?
I think for one, definitely, I know for sure that America has a very big second-hand market because I've lived in there also. But apparently Japan is also on the rise to become a second-hand market enthusiast, especially the young people. Traditionally, they're very cautious with investments, so over half of Japanese household financial assets are almost kept in savings, compared to about 13% in the US, which I know for a fact, and about only 36% in the Eurozone. But now, perhaps because of the economic downturn and maybe a little bit of mistrust in how the world is going, more people, because of the aging society, are turning to investments and savings and secondhand goods. And it also, I think, has to do a little bit with our characteristic of this generation too. We're very environmentally savvy. We care a lot about the environment, and we care a lot about the things, how our actions affect the world. So in a way, I think more MZ consumers are choosing used items, not only because it's practical and financially savvy, but it's also environmentally conscious. Like I told you, like when I buy or find gems in the secondhand market, I feel a sense of pride that I actually did something good. Instead of just spending a lot of money to buy a brand new item, I'm actually getting something that can recycle, that can be used. So I'm adding something to the world that hasn't been done before.
Then Julian, what about in other parts of the world?
Yeah, so young consumers in the United States are also experiencing similar changes too. The No Buy Year Challenge is also a commitment where people try to eliminate unnecessary purchases for a whole year, except for essentials such as like toiletries or food or something like that. Participants now share their experience on social media, fostering a community and encouraging others to save too. There also is a new term, I actually just recently learned about this, called the recession blonde.
Recession blonde.
Yeah, so it basically highlights a trend where women who are blonde, who find it hard to maintain their blonde color, they just go back to their natural hair color because during economic downturns, because it is too expensive to maintain that.
Wow.
Yeah, but aside from beauty, now regarding shopping, the U.S. secondhand market has grew from $44 billion in 2023 and is now expected to reach about $73 billion in 2028. Walmart's walk-in bag, which resembles the Hermes Birkin bag, has become a huge hit too. Now these dupes have exploded in popularity across many categories such as clothing, electronics, and cosmetics. Now this trend reflects a more practical and sensible approach to consumption, focusing on value rather than the fact that it is a counterfeit product.
Okay, very interesting. So to learn more about how young people in other parts of the world are handling rising costs, after the break, we'll connect with a young person from Hungary.
NewsGen wants to hear from you. Go to YouTube and search our channel Arirang News. Click Community and leave a comment down below. Make a new type of news with us.
Joining us today is Hungarian millennial Saba. Welcome to the show, Saba.
Hi there. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us. So Saba, we'd first like to ask you, are you also seeing a growing movement of money saving in Hungary? And could you share some examples as well?
So unfortunately, we've been having some economic hardships for a long time now. So it's not quite a new thing for us. But also I think this has kind of given us a chance to get used to certain tactics and just develop newer ideas and just do all these measures without it affecting us or our mental health more seriously. I would say maybe the methods that younger people use would be that instead of just going out and having fun in, let's say, restaurants or bars, they just buy their drinks, their food, or whatever they would like to do, and they just come together at home. Also, many people are still staying with their parents, or they decide to move into shared apartments and houses if they are living in the capital, Budapest.
You know, Sabah, there are many ways that young people are becoming financially savvy, but one of the most common ways here in South Korea that they do, as we talked about, is through second-hand trading or second-hand sales. Now, since moving to Korea, have you ever tried buying or selling items on second-hand market? And if so, what are your thoughts on it?
I use it mostly to sell items, as I really hate wasting and throwing out still completely fine items. But yes, of course, I also bought some kitchen tools like air fryer. I also bought like mattress steamers, so things that I wouldn't necessarily use every day, and I don't need to rely on it for years and years and just expect it not to get broken in the middle of random Wednesday when I try to do my chores. I always am careful if the quality is still good, if the electronic devices work. But other than that, I can really recommend it, as it saves a lot of money, and it also reduces the amount of trash that we produce, which is of more and more growing importance. There's one more thing that I can really recommend, is that if we don't need something, we can absolutely share those with our friends. For example, I had some friends who left Korea and they gave me a lot of clothes or household items that they didn't need anymore and they couldn't bring home. And I got perfectly fine, almost new items for completely free.
Great. Now to wrap things up, I have a question for you. Do you have any personal saving habits that you would recommend?
I think originally I live by the no spending challenge most of the time. But I do have some measures, for example, or not measures, methods. For example, if I like something online, you know, marketing is really good nowadays and they just like to put the shiny things in front of you. So all I do is I go on the websites and I browse and browse, I overwhelm myself with all these choices. I put everything in my cart, in my interested list, and then I just leave it there and never check out. Most of the time, I forget about them completely. But if there is an item or two that I still think about for days or sometimes weeks, then it means it wasn't just an impulse and it might actually fulfill something deep inside of me. Another thing would be using cash instead of card, especially when people have check cards and not credit cards, of course, that builds credit. But instead of check cards, it is really, really discouraging when you see physically your money just disappearing from your wallet the more you spend. And it really makes you think, do I need this? Is it an absolute necessity that I just need in this moment? It makes you think, and it's, I think, a really, really good way of doing it.
Very smart ideas. All right, Saba, thank you so much for sharing. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
So I think that it's safe to say that one of the most important parts of saving money is knowing where to cut back and where not to. So ending off, what's something you always save on? Or are there any other tips that you'd like to share with our viewers to become finance savvy?
I think one of the tips that I would like to share, or something that we can all work on, which can be very simple, is changing our perception on how we look at secondhand goods or even a little bit worn out goods. Because I think our generation or our previous generation had this perception that, you know, if something is just a little bit off or a little bit different or a little bit worn out, you have to completely replace it with new, whether it's because you want to keep up an image or it's because you feel like it's no longer sustainable. But sometimes you can still carry a bag with a little bit of scratch mark on it. You can still wear a clothes with a little bit of stain on it. So I think it is okay to build these habits and also perception on how we look at other people and how we judge ourselves. That can actually foster, I think, a more healthier, financial savvy habits, because I think sometimes we buy things not necessarily because we really want to, but because your friend is upgrading her phone or he bought a new car and I feel like I need to catch up. I need to catch up with it too. So maybe it's more of a social perception thing and we can all work on this together. And hey, if someone's carrying a bag that looks a little bit worn out, consider a vintage.
Yeah, it's a vintage, classic one.
It's a classic vintage, a little bit of scar mark. It adds character.
What would you suggest, Julian?
Yeah, so personally for me, I agree with everything, and someone who doesn't really do secondhand shopping, I should look into that more. But
there's some great gems out there, Julian.
I would agree. I would say so. Yeah, I will. But looking at your average spending in category, I would say that's like the best way to see where you can cut back on. For example, for me, I used to have a really bad habit of going out for coffee or for matcha or smoothies or any drink, buying that outside, but it costs so much less when you make it at home, and it's just healthier too. So that to me was like one of the best ways I decided to like cut back on my daily spending. So, but I will always spend money on things I enjoy, such as like my hobbies, and one of them is traveling. It's a hobby I truly enjoy, and I believe spending money on experiences is very, very worth it. But so I would say if there's a passion or a hobby you truly enjoy, that it is for your betterment of your life, I don't think it's fair to cut back on that. And saving is important, but also enjoying things. So it's all about, I would say, balancing things, buying necessary things or things that make you happy instead of things that are not necessarily necessary.
Okay, and that's all we have for today, but Newsden will be back tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. Korea time. Special thanks to Cheska Dain-ha.
Pleasure's always mine. Thank you.
Thank you, and Julian Kim.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, and to our viewers, thank you for watching, and we'll see you tomorrow. We are News Generation.
제주 영어 교육 도시의 중심 NLCS 제주에서 세계 명문대 출신 엘리트 교사진과 해외 커리큘럼으로 전 세계 상위 1%의 학사 성과를 달성하고 있으며 졸업생들은 세계 최정상급 대학으로 진학하고 있습니다. 전인적인 성장과 함께 꿈을 찾아가는 특별한 교육의 가치. 글로벌 동문 네트워크로 계속됩니다. NLCS 제주가 명문대 진학의 길을 열어갑니다.
How to survive in Korea. One room. So, you're surviving in Korea if you signed a contract for a one room. Obviously, you're a pro. But the real deal begins now. Step 1. Housewarming. No need to buy toilet paper, diffusers or hand soap. You'll get them soon enough as housewarming gifts. And some are bound to pile up. There's nothing better to serve your guests than milpaeyu nabe. If you have Korean friends coming over, don't forget